Call this board meeting to order. George, want to take roll?
Sure. Colonel Evans?
Here.
Mr. Grozant?
Here.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Here.
Mr. Miko?
Here.
Mr. Naso?
Here. Stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. District goals. Tonight we're going to have a presentation on the 5-year forecast. And that speaks to goal number 2, which is financial prudence. So we have student achievement, always the most important one, supported by financial prudence and community involvement. So with that, we'll just move right on to public comment. None. That's a good sign. Treasurer's report.
All right, thanks, Mr. Naso. As you touched, I have one discussion item found on Exhibit A, and it's that time of year for the 5-year forecast. So, I think someone's excited for it.
Future accountant out there.
So I'm gonna make my way to the podium and bring it up on the screen. So as I mentioned, it's that time of year where we have to do our 5-year forecast and submit it to the state of Ohio, Ohio Department of Education by the end of this month. Present it at this board meeting, then have it on the agenda for the regular meeting for your consideration. It's due twice a year. We do it in October and then do a May update. The October aligns to our budget since our budget's approved in September, and then the spring 5-year forecast, this one is an update to the October, and then also helps me prepare the budget for the following year, for fiscal year 18. So this is where I start my base for the budget, then just make modifications as we get closer to the beginning of the next fiscal year / school year. So the contents of the 5-year forecast, we have our major assumptions, the general fund revenues, the expenditures, and at the end I have a summary. So moving into the major assumptions, first the revenues. Starting off, I touched on this at the last board meeting, how the property tax collection rate and split affected the forecast. So what I'm forecasting for the 5-year forecast is I'm keeping with the trends that we're seeing. They seem to normalize in the latest collection, where before they were kind of swapping every other year for the collection rate. So in the collection rate and the split. So first with the residential collection rate. So far this year we received 98.5%. In the forecast period, I have 98% that forecast in the future years, which held consistent from year to year. And the split would be the second half collections of the calendar year and the first half at 47% and 52%, which held consistent. And then moving on to the commercial collection rate, that one has fluctuated from year to year. This year we saw about 98%. Forecasted 93%. Then if you look in years past, it was 92%, 95, 89, 97. So what I did was I took a 5-year average because those kind of fluctuate. So I went with 95.71 collection rate for the commercial property tax. And then the split, these kind of alternated from year to year, but it seemed to normalize. So I'm sticking with what we saw this year, which is a 46%, 53% split.
George?
Yeah.
One quick question. I know you can get this to me whenever you have it.
Right.
I would like to know what like a 1-point variation or a half point, whatever you choose, in one of these collection rates means to the budget. So
Okay.
if it's up a half or down a half, I'd like to know what that
Right.
is.
So in total, between commercial and residential, if the collection rate changed by 1%, it's about $500,000.
About $500,000, okay. So you did know right off the top of your head. Excellent work.
Moving on, revenues. The revenue assumptions continued. Next piece of one of the drivers of the property taxes, which is our largest piece of revenue, is the assessed valuation, and it changes the effective rate. But also, as valuations change, there's a portion of new construction that goes into it. So I have the 4 years of actual and 4 years of forecasted. Right now, our current calendar year, we're at $1,466,221,000 in valuation. For calendar year 18 to 19, I'm forecasting the valuation is going to go up slightly. We're going to have a reappraisal year that year, and then holding consistent for those 2 years. Then in 2021 is going to be a triennial year. We're just looking at a 10-year history. It typically goes back down. I'm hoping it doesn't, but just to be conservative in the forecast, I've moved it back down a little bit in the last year of the forecast. Then also in November 2016, the residents renewed a 5-year $6 million levy with the collection beginning January 2018, and it'll expire in tax year December 31st, 2021, and collections will continue through December 31st, 2022. So for this forecast period, that renewal piece will be in the revenue I can include it in the revenue section since it passed on the ballot. Our state funding, the forecast assumes fiscal year 16 of $3.6 million of TPP funding, of which $600,000 we lost this fiscal year, and the remaining $3 million will be eliminated for a total loss of TPP funding moving on in the out years. So in TPP, we've lost $3.6 million each year, starting from after this year on. And then the state funding formula, in the governor's budget, they made a reduction for the guaranteed districts of 5%. So I reduced the 5% for next school year and fiscal year 19, since that's the term of the biennium budget. And then just keeping their trend is for the next biennium period, I also made an assumption in the forecast that it would reduce again by another 5%. So I've reduced another $500,000 on top of the $500,000 that are already reduced for fiscal years 2020 and 2021. And then I'll touch on it at the end of the forecast, but just also note that the House, they voted on their substitute budget the other day, and then the budget simulations for today the budget simulations were released today. There was not a significant change for us. We actually received $83 in addition, more than what we were projected to lose. So essentially, this is holding true in the House substitute budget. We're going to be down the $3.6 million, the TPP, and then also the 5% reduction. So the next portion of the budget is going to be moving to the Senate, where they'll evaluate and come up with their budget, then go back to the governor. So we'll touch on that at the end. How to contact our state reps and our state senator to continue to advocating on our behalf. And then the enrollment, in the last piece of the revenue assumption is our enrollment. Where we're at today, I projected a 1 to 2% annual decline in enrollment.
Hey, George, excuse me for interrupting you, but this is just too much for me. And this is directed primarily not to this audience, but at the television audience that watches this thing. That budget from Columbus is absolutely ludicrous. It's unacceptable that a community of 45 to 48,000, like Strongsville is, that contributes well to the state budget every year. Our citizens work hard, they pay their taxes, and the state turns around and throws money at failing districts thinking that's going to solve the problem when it isn't. And they take money away from our kids, from our schools, when they don't deserve to have that done to them. So I ask again, I plead, please contact State Representative Patton, and we put the things up here. Matt Dolan, the state senator now from our district, ring their phones off the hook. Send them letters. We put it in the paper, letters to the editor. We could ask our city council to get on board with us and make sure that this travesty of a budget, which I don't know why they're punishing a good district. They're punishing a school district that achieves. And it makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. I'd love to take a war party down to Columbus, but I can't. So instead, we just need our citizens to stand up and to be heard and to let them know that this is unacceptable to us in any way, shape, or form. And I guess, hope I'm not being too emotional about it, but it really makes me mad because it's just a couple years in a row now that the budgets have been putting the hurt on districts like Strongsville and giving money to our neighboring districts, which is ridiculous. And also giving money to some of the big cities that have failing school districts and don't know how to fix their problems, but we think if we throw more taxpayer money at them, it's going to get better, and it's not. So please, if you can, take the time, write a letter to the editor, get it in the papers, get it to, let your councilman know, let the mayor know, let Dolan know, let Patton know, let Cupp know, let them all know that this is totally unacceptable to the citizens of Strongsville. We pay our taxes, we deserve our fair share. You know, it's something else when we can have cable TV and fancy gymnasiums at the prisons, but we don't have enough money to give our kids in the schools. So I say if they're going to take money from someplace, take it out of the prisons. They need little hammers and big rocks. That's about all they need.
Thank you, Duke.
Thanks.
Well said, Duke.
So on the next slide of the forecast, the expenditure assumptions. So staffing assumptions, last school year to this school year, we're down 17 employees, positions, I should say 17 positions. Then the forecast period in fiscal year 18, estimating an additional 2 positions due to enrollment changes. Primarily those are 1.5 coming at the elementary level, and then another half for a section at the high school for a foreign language. Also with that too, that could fluctuate as we move into next year as enrollment comes in. Special education ratios change as well, so that could potentially increase as we see changes over the summer with enrollment. And then in school year 19, we can see as our enrollment continues to decline in the middle levels, the middle school level, we might be able to reduce a team, which would reduce about 13 positions. And then in 2020 and 2021, keeping steady at 644. The forecast assumes that all union agreements are currently as defined. In 16, we closed an elementary building, Zellers. In 17, we closed Drake and consolidated 2 middle schools into 1. We also saw healthcare rates are forecasted to increase 10% each year in fiscal year 18 to 21. That's industry standard. The past 2 years, we're fortunate that we've come in under those. Last year, we saw a 3% increase, and this year we saw a 5% increase. So continue to go up a little bit, but we're still below industry standards. And the reason I keep it at the 10% is you never know from year to year. We've had a couple good years, and that could change from one year to another. And then, as we talked before, the forecast also assumes an additional $500,000 for technology upgrades and infrastructure each year of the forecast.
And the technology upgrades are simply to maintain what we have. I mean, that budget is set up so that we didn't get, as we've improved the buildings with the new middle school and the high school, that we have to maintain that budget, because otherwise we'll get in the same position we were in last time, where as the funding dropped off, all the technology essentially was going away. So this is just maintaining. It's not like we're gonna, everyone's gonna get 2 Chromebooks,
Right.
It's not that. It's just maintaining what we have, because there's repair, there's replacement, there's upgrades that have to occur as you go along, so.
Yeah, it's to maintain the infrastructure, maintain what we have, and be able to provide what is needed in the future. And Vicki and I have been working on, Vicki's been working on a tech plan. I've kind of been helping her align those dollars to it. So we've got I think the tech plan aligns for 5 years as well.
And Mr. Naso, please understand that we have to pay and buy our Chromebooks, where other districts just get that stuff for free from the state using our tax dollars. So
Yep.
we have to invest in our children because nobody else is going to help us.
Sure.
So general fund revenues, a bit of the total $73.1 million in revenue. The biggest chunk is our local taxes, which makes up 69% or $50 million. Then we have our state foundation, which is 13.5%. Our state of Ohio reimbursements make up 8.3% of the total revenue. Then our TPP reimbursement supplement, this is for fiscal year 17, it makes up 4.1%. Next year, everything stays as is. That piece of the pie is removed. Our TIF revenues makes up about 3%, and all other revenue makes up about 2.2%. So as I stated before, we received $3.6 million in TPP funding, and it's going to be eliminated coming next year. So moving on to property taxes, and if you remember when I presented this in the past, I have, the first slide is the chart, the next slide is the reconciliation of how the numbers change from year to year. So I'm just gonna focus on the chart, but you have in front of you the reconciliation to see the changes. So our property taxes, this year we're collecting about 50.4 million. Next year, I'm estimating about 50.3, then 50.2. So it's gonna, I'm projecting a consistent about 50.3 and 2, kind of averaging out there. And the reason for the fluctuations is changes in the collection rate, where that that's little percent is changing slightly. And we did see an increase from previous years, which was due to the change in valuation. So if we continue to see new construction, this amount can increase as well. But I don't want to depend too much on new construction. So if we get it, that's an added bonus.
Okay.
Next is our state foundation revenue. In 2016, we received in total 11.1 million. In 17, 12.1. Of that 12.1, 2.1 million of that is the TPP supplement. And what that is we were getting a TPP reimbursement. That's what got phased out in the governor's budget. For this biennium, they kept us whole through a supplement, which essentially took it from one pot and moved it to the next. And I just have to report it this way, out of this bucket. So the blue graph below is the actual state foundation formula funding. This year, our core aid is 9.7 million. Next year, 9.2 million, which is the $500,000 decrease due to the guarantee. And then in 2020, 8.8 million. In 2021, 8.8 million as well. Property tax allocation. The red is the TPP reimbursement. As you can see, the rest of that's getting phased out this year. And then the rest of it is the homestead and rollback credit that we get that the taxpayers get a break on, that we get from the state allocation. And that's been holding consistent at 6.1, 6.2 million. Other revenues. This category makes up about 5.1% of the total, with the TIF and the other revenues. The TIF has been consistent, about 2.1 million every year, with the exception of 2015, where we collected a big delinquency from prior years, but it's been coming in around the same 2.1. And the other revenues, which is made up of tuition from parents for programs such as the preschool, full day kindergarten, tuition from other districts due to court-placed students, pay to play fees, the tech fee, donations, the cell tower, interest, Medicare, all that together averages out about 1.6, 1.5 million each year of the forecast. So in total revenues, we're about 73 million this year. Next year, we're going to see a decline, which is due to the decline in TPP revenue. So you can kind of see how it dips down, and then we're pretty consistent in our revenues from after that. So any questions on revenues before I go to expenditures? No.
To summarize, everything's pretty consistent except for the TPP loss, right? I mean,
Right.
Everything else is.
The state farm.
And get one percentage of the budget was the TPP total,
In
the
total?
3.6 million?
No, it was the total.
2.9%.
Okay. Cameron says 2.9,
No, total
That's of
TPP
the revenue.
reimbursement supplement, 4.1%
4.1.
of our
So
total budget.
Not only that's lost the TPP, but the state funding's
Yeah,
Going
the
down too.
guaranteed.
absolutely, they're getting us from both sides.
So where does the money go? So our total annual budget, well, what I'm projecting to spend this year, where revenue or expenditures are going to be at the end of this year, is 69.9 million. About 79.3% of that's going into salaries and benefits, which makes up about 55.4 million. Then the other lines are purchase services, 11.6%, materials and supplies, 3.2%, equipment, 1.4%, and other objects, 4.5%. salaries. This slide looks a little scary. As you can see, it's going up each year. The changes are on the next page, but fiscal year 17, I'm projecting we'll have our salaries will be about 39.4. Where it jumps up next year to 41.2 million is a few things. We have the cost of living increases, step increases, and then also this year we experienced budget savings. We had positions that were open throughout the year. As people come and go, there's a period where the position stays open, so we see some savings there. Even at the beginning of the year when the budget was set, we had some resignations, retirements, where people were hired at a lesser value. So a lot of small things, but they kind of added up, and essentially adding back $700,000 in savings next year. And also in this line, because you never know what's going to happen after the budget's set, I built in a little contingency. So what you see in 14 to 17 is actual. Then 18 to 21, although it's forecasted, it's also what I'm anticipating, also setting the budget at as well. So we could potentially see budget savings in those years as well. So at the time I do it, I'm thinking every position is going to be filled, and then throughout the year we experience some transition, which generates budget savings. So. Benefits. Same thing, 14 to 17 are actual, 18 to 21 is the budgeted period. Where we're seeing the increases from 17 to 18 is the increase of healthcare, the projected 10% increase. Our healthcare is on a calendar year, we're on a fiscal year, so in 18 we're only going to see half of the 10%, and then in 2019 on, and you'll see the full 10%. All the other lines are pretty consistent. And the other, we're seeing a little bit of increase due to our premiums for life, workers' comp, and due to the reductions in positions in the out years, possibly a little bit increase in unemployment for a year or so. Purchase services, 14 to 16 is actual, 17 is so far this year, but I also have it at the budgeted amount too, because never know what could happen throughout the rest of this year. Could see some budget savings as we experienced last year. The blue is the utility costs, where we've been seeing about $100,000 increase there. Tuition to other districts, we've seen that increase, and that's items such as the College Credit Plus, our tuition, our special education settlements, the voucher programs at Choice, charter school tuition. So from 16 to 17, we saw a $330,000 increase there, and then next year I'm anticipating another $350,000 increase in the areas of Ed Choice, the special ed settlements, and then another 100. I built in a little increase to the community schools. Don't know what's going to happen there, if their amount increases or not, but I just built in a little increase to be conservative. And then we're also increased from last year to this year too is, one, their full budget wasn't spent last year. Then also we had purchase orders that carried into this year that could potentially be spent. So we could have that same thing happen again this year. I might realize some savings. Materials and supplies, same concept. 14 to 16 is the actual, 17 is what they spent so far this year, but their total budget as well, as they might continue to spend throughout the rest of the year, and 18 to 21 is the budgeted amounts. The big items here are the blue is textbooks, green is instructional supplies, fuel for our buses, and all other items that might fall in this category. Equipment. This is our general fund equipment. There's about $300,000 budgeted in all the different budget centers, and then an additional $700,000 in the tech budget. This doesn't include the PI budget, which is separate and doesn't need to be included in the 5-year forecast. But we have our PI fund, which is separate, that also provides equipment upgrades as well. And then the last category, other objects, transfers, and advances. This is pretty consistent from year to year. The blue is the general fund debt. Other objects been consistent with what makes that one portion of those costs are auditor fees or county auditor fees, and then our insurance. And then the green is transfers and advances to other funds, where we might need to cut, where deficits might occur, and we may need to cover. And then just wrapping it up in our summary, or one of our district goals is financial prudence, and just various items that we've done over the years, and we'll continue to build on this, is our financial prudence throughout the years, where we're since 2010, we've closed 6 buildings, repurposed 1, and also built a brand new middle school and renovated the high school. And since 2014, we switched to a fully insured healthcare plan. Through last fiscal year, we saved $2.8 million. Once this fiscal year is over, I'll update that number to get it through fiscal year 17. Also continue on with district savings. Since 2009, we're 206 less positions compared to this year, which is a 23% decline. In 16, we reduced 24 positions, which is in all funds, where before it was just the general fund that I was showing, which generated $1.4 million. Going into this year, reduced 20 positions, which generated about 500,000 savings. And the difference between the first bullet point and the second bullet point was the type of positions that were reduced, where in 2016 was more certificated and 17 was more classified, which is different pay scales. And then another cost savings efforts, we were able to implement the Ohio Online Learning Program, the Strongsville Academy, which we were able to retain students in the district, which kept them from going to charter schools, which saved us about $200,000 annually.
Hey, George, I think we need a total figure, like when you go from 2010 to current. I'd like you to add it all up and let
I got that.
people know.
We got that and coming up shortly. So the summary of the 5-year forecast, we started this year. We started this year carrying in 18.4 million, projecting about 73.1 in total revenues. Our expenses is projecting about 69.9, which would leave us about 3.2 million of revenues over expenditures, which will give us that end of year cash balance of 21.6 and an unencumbered cash balance of 20.5. If the trend continues with our revenues and expenditures, as you can see, once the revenues for the TPP drops off, you can see we start getting into a deficit spending, and we have the cash to sustain that for a few years, but in the long term, that's not sustainable. Where we're going to need to do something. What I was thinking, I've been talking to Mr. Naso about it, was possibly re-looking at our finance committee on what we could do there, and using the finance committee as a driver to look at potential new revenues, or where we can make recommendations for reducing expenses, because we need to get where that red is and the deficit spending. We're going to need to get that balanced out to sustain our cash balance. Although we have a cash balance, we don't want to use it up, because there's periods in the year where it's a cash flow issue, and at some points revenues are high, then we go months without receiving revenue, so we rely on that cash balance to make payroll. So we can sustain that for a few years, and then after a while, it's gonna catch up to us.
Yeah. So I remember in the past when we had to borrow money to make payroll,
Right.
right? Now we're sitting on a cash balance that's building nicely up until this year,
Right.
and then the TPP goes away and it starts to eat away at it. This is all the effort of the administration and the board and everybody who's paying attention, trying to keep this going, and then you take a hit like that. So we're gonna have to address it, and the
Right.
sooner we do it, the more cumulative it is. So we're just gonna have to think about what we're gonna do, and I think one of the things we're gonna have to think about is how we do certain things, not just incrementally better, but comprehensively different. So we're gonna have to think about how we do things, and this isn't something it's big enough that you can't just trim, and I'm not talking about, we just have to rethink how we do certain things. We have to look at things that impact the education the least, but that we do, and we have to think about how we do them, and maybe there's a whole new way to do it, and, it's not gonna be a tweak, it's gonna have to be a chunk. I don't know what it is, and then I'm not saying we're gonna start cutting things. We just have to look at how we do things, our processes and different things, and maybe there's better ways to do it. And maybe there's a way to come out of this, just exactly like what we did with the healthcare. Maybe there's another, I don't know if there's another item like that out there, I doubt it, but there's got to be something that we can do, and there will be. There absolutely are things we can do, and we've got a lot of brains on it, and we'll figure it out. And we got Vicki Turner out there, she's thinking about it, I can see her head, just burning up out there. She wants to do something too, so we'll get it.
And then the next slide, I put this together just to show what our cash balance is and what it could have been if the changes weren't made with the TPP. So if we would have still been receiving the funding for the TPP, it'd be the red bar. At 2021, rather than having the negative 5.9 million in cash, we would end the year with $5 million in cash. So the 5-year forecast would have showed a positive balance through the life of the forecast if we would have continued to see the TPP dollars. So I just felt that slide was powerful in the sense of when we're advocating to the state is what the reduction in TPP means to us. It's quite a big chunk of our revenue that could sustain us for quite a while. We would keep receiving it every year. And then Colonel Evans, to your point, here's the slide you were asking about. If we didn't make those changes, so in fiscal year 2014, our expenditures were 68.5 million. If we didn't make any changes, didn't have the staffing reductions, and everything would have stayed the same, we would have seen our salary increases to 7.8 million. And this is going to fiscal year 2021. This is going through the life of the forecast. So we would have seen our salary increase to 7.8 million. Our health care increased to 9.1 million. Tuition increases would have continued, or are continuing, I should say. That's just the driver that's in there, and then all other increases that we're experiencing would brought up our expenses to 89.5 million. But because we've reduced positions, we reduced 3.7 million. We've had our self-insurance savings of 2.8 million. We've made other adjustments that's going to save us cumulatively of 4.1 million, which drove the 2021 forecast expenditures down to 78.9 million. So by doing things that we've already done, we're able to cut cumulative $10 million out of the budget, essentially. So is that where you were looking for?
Yeah, and it gets to Carl's point that to get that 78.9 million down, we're gonna have to do something that changes bigger than just trimming on the edges. So, my thought to Columbus is very simple: either restore appropriate funding to our district or get your nose out of our district.
Right.
Don't give us unfunded mandates.
And that wraps up my forecast. Any questions? Before I leave off, going back to reiterate what Colonel Evans said, the next step in the state budget process, it's been approved at the House. Now it's at the Senate level. We'll have our chance again to go down and testify if we're invited or with the group again. Also, we could contact our state reps. Right now it's in the Senate, so it'd be Senator Dolan that we make our efforts to, again, with also the Governor Kasich, just in the event if there's any changes, any favorable changes at the Senate level, that won't get line item vetoed at the governor's level like it did last time around. So,
Disgusting.
if there's no further comments, questions.
Nope, we're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice work.
That concludes my report.
Cameron?
Thank you, Mr. Day. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to go out a little order.
Please.
I know as a dad with young children, it's a little
Lots of-
difficult. You've done a great job, kids, and want to skip to the human resource reports, and I'll have Jenny go to the podium for the one item under human resources for the month.
Got the family back in? You ready to come up here, Mr. Breckner? Thanks. So before I read my report, I just honored to be here to introduce Stephen Bruckner as our new operations manager for the district. Steve was hired in 2011 as an assistant principal at Strongsville High School, and over the last 6 years, he has shown his capacity to lead and make meaningful change. He has been instrumental in establishing our online learning program for our students. He has not only learned the ins and outs of the program, but has evaluated all of our non-traditional learning programs. And now with the implementation of Strongsville Academy, he's determined the most cost-effective plan to ensure that all of our Strongsville High School students can graduate with a high school diploma from Strongsville High School. He has supervised summer school as well, getting many of our students to earn credit towards graduation. And most recently, Steve has been deeply involved with the high school renovation. He worked with our contractors and construction team for the past 3 years to get the most out of our dollars and get the best learning environment for our students. This work went above and beyond his assistant principal duties, but through the experience, he truly found his niche and passion for school operations. So much so that Steve has just recently purchased a home in Strongsville and is in the process of renovating it all on his own. Well, not truly on your own, because you have many helpers, as we see in the audience this evening. We have his 5 children, Rylan, 12. Where's Rylan? There's Rylan, okay. Vincent, who's 10. We have Rebecca, who's 8. Grayson, who's 3. And Brinley, who's 1.5, we hear over there. And one to be named later, along with his wife, Rebecca, to assist him. So I just have to say, Steve, throughout the interview process, you demonstrated your ability to not only create a vision for the business department, but to be able to work with our various employee groups and manage the day-to-day operations. So we're thrilled to have you as part of our central office leadership team, and congratulations.
Thank you. I'll take a microphone when I get a chance. I just want to thank everyone. Some of my coworkers are here tonight, my family, Mr. Ryba, Mrs. Pelko, and the board. I know with my family's love, with Mr. Ryba and Mrs. Pelko, your vision and your leadership and the support of the board in this community, that we'll be able to do some great things. And I look forward to the challenges, and I look forward to the conversations, and I know that we can work together and make this place continue to be a great school district. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just to finish my report, under Human Resources, under C1, I have the resignation of our administrative staff, Stephen Bruckner, Assistant Principal at Strongsville High School. And under C2, I have the appointment of Stephen Bruckner, Operations Manager for our district. And that concludes my report this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Congratulations. We're thrilled to have you on board here relatively soon. And your children have done a phenomenal job sitting here tonight.
yeah.
Good job, guys.
Good job. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here. And we understand it's bedtime and
Yep.
we need to go, so that's okay. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Going back up to A, the discussion item, I've recently spent some time meeting with our World Languages Department and Jason, who's a representative from EF Tours, on the discussion of international travel. If we remember last year, there were some world events that we decided that it would not be best to continue to travel to Europe. And so we've continued to have conversations about where are we as a district, where do we want to go in terms of international travel, specifically for this instance for our world languages. So I've asked 3 of our teacher representatives to be here tonight, Alana Bendetta representing French, Janet Sansevera for Spanish, and Christina Potter for German, and then Jason Arbor from Education or EF Tours is here to kind of give some insight from the school perspective, the teacher's perspective, as well as a tour group as to the benefits of international travel, their experiences with it, as well as the safety and security of our students. This is meant to be a discussion item with the board as to where we want to go from here in terms of international travel. So if you'd like to come up to the podium and share your thoughts, we'll go from there.
Good evening. My name is Christina Potter, and I teach German at the high school, levels 1 through AP. I guess you can say I'm an experienced traveler. I've been traveling since the age of 1. I didn't have the standard childhood. We flew to Germany every summer, lived there every summer, traveled through Europe every summer. And so I've got a lot of experience with traveling, with airports, with customs, train stations, and all kinds of countries. I don't think there's a country in Europe I haven't hit. And so we have a lot of firsthand experience. Myself, my coworkers have firsthand experience of international travel and living abroad. And that's why for over 20 years now, Strongsville High School World Language Department has been running international trips for our world language students. These trips bring the curriculum we teach in the classroom to life. Students have the ability to be fully immersed in the culture by using the language with the native speakers, eating the local cuisine, and seeing the historical sites firsthand instead of in a textbook. All tours we take are fully inclusive and expertly designed to immerse participants in the local culture while introducing the students to the people, places, and experiences that make each destination unique. Anytime you can experience the richness of cultures different from your own by talking with people of other nationalities, traveling internationally, trying foods from other countries, and embracing other educational experiences that fall outside of your comfort zone, you grow and change in positive ways. And this is just the kind of personal development that can help our students stand out in the eyes of college admissions counselors and future employers in a competitive field of other strong candidates. International travel and cultural immersion programs offer unparalleled exposure to the customs, language, and everyday life of diverse communities. This experience is imperative for anyone who's serious about pursuing public service or global relations work as part of a business or political career. Educational travel can improve our students' lives throughout the development of self-awareness, enhancing their perspectives on life, fostering independence, strengthening their leadership skills, and building their confidence. As an AP teacher, I can attest to the edge that student travel has given our students when taking the rigorous AP World exams. 2010, we were in Berlin, and we took a 2-hour tour of the Reichstag, the Parliament building. Tour guides there have to have their PhD in history. 2 hours of history, architecture, the government structure, and the current legislation. And it just so happened that the current legislation at that time was whether or not to bring back the draft, the military draft for males of ages 18 years of age. Wouldn't you know it, 2 years later on the AP exam, the persuasive essay was, do you believe the German government should bring back the draft? Our students had an advantage. Our AP students had firsthand knowledge that was provided to them by that tour guide, the history of why it was there, why it was taken away, the economical and social impact, and all of that helped them with their AP exam. And that's why we feel that we really should continue these programs and these trips overseas, because it's not just a vacation, it's not just a sightseeing tour, it's not just taking thousands of pictures and coming home. There is so much education and growth that the students gain from this, and the teachers, we gain it also in the process. I'm going to move it along into Alana. Jen. Okay.
Just go in line, I guess. For those who don't know me, I'm Janet Sansevera. I teach Spanish at the high school. Like Christina had said, it's a tough act to follow there, but I have also traveled numerous times. I lived in Spain. I've traveled to Spain, through Italy. And then this past summer, I led a group of 24 students through Ecuador and the Galapagos Islands. And I wanted to read to you a testimonial from one of them who has just completed his freshman year at Ohio State University and is a Spanish major there. So following up a paragraph of appreciation for our program here at the high school and how much ahead he felt of his peers at Ohio State, he followed up with an international travel blurb about traveling to Ecuador was easily one of the most beneficial experiences that I've been fortunate enough to have. The people and the environment that I encountered there was truly one of the most unique on this planet, and I would be thrilled to see more people continue to have such an opportunity. My trip to Ecuador allowed me to expand my knowledge of Hispanic culture, improve my Spanish skills, and make friends and memories that I will cherish for the rest of my life. So it seems, I think to me, somewhat obvious that he was affected by it, maybe more so because he is majoring in Spanish, but as an AP Spanish student last year, he got to, again, take that firsthand and apply his knowledge. He went out of his way everywhere we went to speak to local people. We were just scattered around a plaza, and he, while waiting for the rest of the kids to get some food or coffee at a cafe, he would just make friends with people around who, just to practice his Spanish, just local people, anything that he could say or talk about. So I think, again, affording them that opportunity alone, I don't know, I can't talk right now. It works wonders, and I do think that it has more of an advantage to him because he is a Spanish major, but I do think a lot of the kids benefit in the same way, being able to apply what they've learned in the classroom to the real world and see another culture firsthand. I'm gonna pass that off to someone who can maybe speak better.
Hi, I'm Alana Bendetta, and I'm a French teacher. I currently teach levels 2, 3 honors in AP, and I would like to talk a little bit about the safety. And what Christina said at the very end was how this really isn't a vacation for us. It's not. It is not a vacation. All we do while we're there is constantly worry about our kids. Are they safe? Are they getting the most out of this that they can? We sleep with one eye open because we are responsible for these children that their parents have put in our hands. So I know personally, when it comes to traveling and taking our chaperones with us, this is something that is very, very important to us, and it's not just anybody can go, because that's not how we do things. I know personally, if I don't know my chaperones inside and out, if I know that they may step on my toes, if they don't let me lead the way that I feel like I need to, then I'm not comfortable going, especially with taking a group of kids. I'm only a mom to a 2-year-old and one hopefully coming in less than 2 weeks, but I know that I would not feel comfortable if my child went with someone who wasn't comfortable with the other adults. So I don't travel without my husband because he has a military background, Navy Special Warfare, and his biggest thing is situational awareness. That term is always used. And he is our main security person when we go. He is at the back of the line for everything. He never enters a room until everybody else is there. His back is never to a window or to a door. He's always on high alert. He carries all the medication. He carries all the copies of the passports. And he is our go-to person. Plus, I feel very comforted knowing that if I have male students, that I have a male chaperone. And the other chaperones that I choose are people who have either been to those countries before and are also teachers. I took my mom because I had a few students with severe medical concerns, and they were more comfortable with a mom going. Couldn't argue that one, so I brought her along. She had been with me traveling in France before, so I brought her again. My cousin is a high school teacher at Elyria. We brought her along because she's a high school teacher in Elyria, so can handle kids very well also. And then, like I said, my husband. And once we have our itinerary set and talk about the fun stuff, like where we're going to go, what we're going to eat, what we're going to pack, everything else in our meetings are what if. What if this happens? What do we do? And that is something so important that my students know whenever we're over there, they are constantly on high alert. And while we can't control the events of the world, we absolutely can control how we handle things. And by students having that situational awareness, we are able to kind of foster this super safe group. And like I said, it's just very important for us to feel safe and secure, and I know if I feel safe, I can provide that safety for my students. So with that, I'd like to pass it off to Jason to talk a little bit more about safety. Thank you.
Well, good evening, board members. Thanks for inviting me to come in and field questions primarily. I would love it to be more of an open forum where you ask me any kind of questions that you might have. We're handing out some of our safety protocols and procedures to you. Every situation when it comes to safety is a little bit different, so these are some basic guidelines that we follow at EF to make sure that every one of our students come back safely. And we've been doing this for about 51 years. And in that time, every student's come back. We pride ourselves in that, and honestly, we have to have them come back because we get invited to situations.
You better come back.
Yeah, because if they didn't, I would never be invited here. You know, it's something that. Do what?
It'd be a heck of a lot worse than that.
Yeah, yeah. And but just from, you know, I can always say, you know what, your children are our children, and we're gonna, you know, keep them as, you know, safe. But you know, if you want to look at it just from a 30,000-foot view, it is because of our reputation that we are very strict on what we do. Our safety protocols start before we go on tour by making sure that our teachers are trained before they ever step outside of the United States. Everyone that is involved in a tour has been special trained. They have been vetted. The tour guides themselves are licensed by the country's tourism boards. And just for a point of reference, we operate in 53 countries. We have 43,000 employees that work for EF Education. So we have boots on the ground absolutely everywhere, which makes us unique. We are the only company that can boast that. We operate 500 operational offices throughout the world. I can attest to the safety of everything that we do, right down to the backpacks that we have the students wearing, so that we can identify them in crowds, or they can identify their group if they have to be taking pictures and they get distracted and things like that. But I could literally talk for hours about what we do. That's why I brought the document that you have. At this point, I would really love it if you guys would ask me questions. You know, I want you to feel comfortable with what we do, and there's no questions that are, you know, too tough or out of bounds.
Well, I'll start, and then we'll move it through. But I mean, for me, you know, I know last time we voted not to send our children, right? And I think that the way the world's evolving, and as dangerous it is, and I believe there was just a travel warning issued for Europe, I believe, just yesterday or the day before. I believe I saw that go out. But I mean, for me, if we're gonna continue this program, the things we have to be able to do are, one, we've gotta seek low-risk destinations, right? So we've gotta be able to look at the world, see where the hot spots are, see what's going on, and then choose destinations. They may not be the classic destinations that we've always used, because those might be too hot for our opinion, and we're always gonna be on the safe side, right? The other thing that your organization has to do is you then have to limit the financial impact to a family that decides to go through, but then at a late point we decide go or no go, or the parents decide go or no go because what they're reading, you've got to limit the impact. So the fact that you've got an insurance charge and another charge, and the parent and the kid and the children and families are putting up that money, you've got to be able to say, listen, we get it. This is a different world. Your business has to evolve. You can't say that I'm a normal travel agent, and when you book, there's no refunds on this money. You got to say this is a whole different environment. This is school travel. This isn't personal travel where you take it at your own risk. This is the school district with this risk, and you can't have the families bearing the brunt of the financial decisions if we say that we're not comfortable with them going, or if the family decides that. So that's one of the things. And then you got to be flexible. I think when you're thinking about, okay, it's a Spanish trip, right? And the children, these are the locations. You got to think, okay, where's the spot to go this year because of the current events out in the world. And then if at the last minute we decide to, you know, cancel the trip, we've got to somehow limit that liability or that loss to the families. Because last time we made up a little bit of it, I believe, but the families also took a hit. So I don't know. Those are some things for me that are hot, and then that are interesting to me. Like, how will you do it? Because you're gonna have to evolve. Your business is gonna have to evolve, at least if you want to do business with us. that, I mean, it's just gonna have to be that way. And I don't know what anyone else wants to add to that, or,
You took a lot of my thunder away, having been in certain situations like that where I've been aware of terrorists outside of the place I was staying. It happened to be during Desert Storm, but, and I appreciate the presentations you ladies made, and I don't disagree
Outstanding.
with any of it as far as the cultural benefit to the kids. My daughter is a Spanish teacher. She's been on several trips. And in fact, they're supposed to go to Greece and Italy, I think, this summer. I'm scared to death because that situation with those refugees and all of those radical Islamic terrorists over there is dreadful. And as a board, I mean, the consensus was we didn't want to hamper the kids' experience, but at the same time, we have to look their parents in the eye if something happens and say, yes, we had let that go forward because the cultural experience was so much more important than their safety. And you can tell me all day long how safe and everybody's trained, but I can tell you when the bullets start flying, the training goes right out the window for most people. So, you know, it's survival. So I echo what Carl said, that I think like for Spanish, you have a lot of options in this hemisphere. French, a few. German, not so much, maybe Argentina. But, yeah, but, you know, I think that we do need to look at non-traditional destinations that might give parents and the board a more comfort feeling, a zone of the trip, and at the same time give the kids the exposure. I'm sure the ones that went to the Galapagos and Ecuador or El Salvador or wherever they went, you know, stay away from Nicaragua, but I think those other places are really, really pretty interesting as well. I know Argentina was, and some of those, you know, places might be just as nice to go to, even though it's not the home country of Spain. So that's what my thought would be, anyway.
so, I mean,
So- So for me, I'm going to take a little bit of a different stance. I was the kid who spent my summers in Greece, so I understand what full immersion is. I understand that spending time in Yugoslavia, Macedonia, Bulgaria, and I hopscotched through many countries on the eastern side of Europe. There's something magical about having your 8-year-old son sit in the middle of, us Greeks still call it Constantinople, but you'll think of it as Istanbul, international airport, and watching a contingent from Africa come through in white silk gowns and packages on their head. But there's still, as a father, I'm still nervous, right? So what I told my son was, as he's drinking his goat milk, not cow milk, in Istanbul, is don't talk. I'll speak Greek, and until we actually get to the flight to get to the U.S., don't talk. Just grab my hand, squeeze it if you need to talk. And there were 4 security gates from the lobby of Istanbul Airport. 3 times our documents were reviewed. Now, you know, I do agree with some of my board members. We have to be careful. We have to make some good decisions. But the experience of an opportunity for a child to get completely immersed in a different culture. So many people here think going out of the country is Mexico and Canada, and it's not. It's the smells, it's the grocery stores, it's the sounds, it's the watch out for the cow poop on the street and those things. And so I'm an advocate of the travel, but we have to ensure the safety of our children. And those are gonna have to be really good and smart decisions. And there's a really smart person sitting next to me who can, you know, help with a lot of that. So again, I'm an advocate for the travel. I really am, especially for those students that seek it, that want to further that, you know, immersion, because it changes their life. My son, to this day, if you ask him where he wants to go this summer for vacation, he wants to go back to Greece. He wants to see his cousins. He wants to see his family. It was rough.
The goat milk.
And you know, there's just different tastes and smells, but we have to be smart on the decisions that we make. You said situational awareness. That's what my mother taught me when I was traveling. You know, as a little boy, always watch out what everybody's doing. Watch people's hands. Keep your money in your front pocket. Don't put it in your briefcase, right? Have a backpack. Make sure you bring another pair of underwear and a t-shirt, because what if your bag gets lost? So I would like to have the conversation way ahead of time, because when we made that last decision, It was a world event, and we had to make a snap decision. It was unfair to the families, because those children and the families lost a lot. But let's please have this conversation much earlier, and let's make smart choices on our locations. But again, I'm in favor of that immersion, that opportunity for the children, but with be
The
safe.
problem is that it can change on a dime, right? I mean, you could be like a week out, you could be 2 days out, and all of a sudden, and that's too short of notice, right? But you could be a month out, and something like that happens that impacts the destination, and then, you know, then there's gotta be the flexibility, there's gotta be something where they're not held. You know, I realize you have to make arrangements, and there's a lot goes into it, it's your business, I know, but
And this may not be a popular comment, but I'm going to say it anyways. At 10 years old, back when Greece and Turkey weren't of best friends, my mother's village is about an hour west of Thessaloniki. The train station blew up, but we were still an hour away. When something happens in the U.S., I get phone calls from Greece. What happened? What happened? I don't know. That was, another state away. So we also have to be mindful of distance, location, country, and the ability of.
So if you're lucky enough that you're not in that train station, then it's okay to be in the country? Is that your point?
My point is a country is very large, and there are many different regions. And if an event happens, the likelihood of another event happening because the security force is in play, you have to weigh that. But if an event happens and we're a few weeks away from going there, and there's a travel ban by our government, we need the flexibility of your company to be able to say, here are our options, and we're not sending our children there. That's my point.
Richard, Jane?
Can you just give us, I'm assuming you've been the tour company for a number of years with Strongsville, so can you tell us about your history with Strongsville?
Well, I've been with EF for 5 years, and I do know that our records go way back, and we have had a relationship with this district, which to speak to what you're saying, we want to be as flexible as we possibly can
Right.
and continue that relationship. And to let you know, we also do about 85% of the high schools that are out there travel with EF. We are the largest at what we do. And every situation is unique, but we do pride the fact that we have these long-standing relationships with it. There's a lot of things that you said that, we could talk hours about.
Right.
A couple of things, and I like what you said about the country and the size and having the proper perspective on things. Because there's a lot of information out there about the world that isn't necessarily, I don't want to say it's not accurate, but it's a little bit skewed a bit. For instance, there was a travel alert that was posted. There is a difference between travel warnings and travel alerts. When a travel warning is listed, is issued for a country, we absolutely don't go there. There's travel warnings right now for Mexico, and there's travel warnings to places like Egypt, which is it's a shame, but we absolutely will not go there. That's our policy as a company. Travel alerts have been issued 13 times since 2013. It's basically saying just be aware. Keep yourself alert, and don't put yourself into stupid situations that you don't belong to be in. Also, what I find, and this is just through my own personal travels, because I get to travel with these groups all the time, is that what we necessarily are seeing in the media here in the United States doesn't represent the world accurately. They do focus on the negativity. They do focus on the drama. And they don't put a lot of effort into talking about all the beautiful, wonderful things that are going on in the world. But because we are a media-heavy country with the television and even social media, our students only see the one side, and even our families only see the one side of the coin. So their knee-jerk reaction is to say the world's unsafe. The Council on World Affairs put out a study last year, and they took the globe and they broke it down into safety zones, if you will. And every country had a color coding to it, and obviously, white and blue and everything. That means it's a country that has very little violent actions going on. That's everything from terrorist activity to domestic violence to crime rates overall. The United States is a yellow to orange, where most of Europe is in the green range, into some places like even Spain, which is even less a hotspot, if you will. So I always want everybody to make sure that you just educate yourself. I'm the salesman, so if I talk, it sometimes gets lost. So find out about what's going on in the world and then make the decisions. Now, we're always going to consult with the school and the teachers on what locations we should be going to. And we'll definitely, show them where, we think based off of the conversations that we've had in this meeting today, we're going to show you some areas and places that you can go to that maybe fits what your vision of the world is, and always obviously keeping safety in the forefront of our conversations. In regards to to monetary losses and things like that of the families, again, we're gonna work as much as possible, but we do have very clear guidelines for this, and these guidelines aren't unique to EF. You can go through every company, and they're pretty much consistent across the board. But we do have other policies that are based off of the date of departure that tell us, how much, the cancellation fees might be. And please bear this in mind. Those cancellation fees, very small portion that comes from EF. When our contracts with places like the airlines and the hotels, as soon as a ticket is sold, they may not know the date that we're leaving or the exact destination, but our contract, based off of volume, is that the airlines are notified immediately when a family enrolls that a ticket's been sold. Same thing with the hotels. So they hit us with some nice fees. We can't control those. Likewise, if we were to absorb all those fees, then that would be financial suicide for us. We will be as flexible as possible, and it does take just some conversations with me, or if I can't give you answers, I can bubble it up to people that are at a much higher pay grade than myself. I want to make the schools happy. And that's, we want the relationship to last. We want everybody to be congenial about it, but understand the other side of it, because we do get hit. It's not something this arbitrary thing that we just came up with as far as fees. These are things that are real costs that, we will absorb as much as we can, but it's not always possible, especially when you're talking large groups of 40 to 50 people. That's pretty bad. And then, as a domino effect, when we give consideration to one community, Berea finds out about it, and then you got Brunswick and Medina, who all travel with me. They're gonna say, well, we want what Strongsville has. So we do have to sometimes be a little bit strict so that we aren't cutting. You what?
They all want what Strongsville has.
Yeah, they all want what Strongsville has. But we do have to be somewhat strict in the cancellation policy.
And that's what I talked about when I said that your industry, your business, you guys have to somehow evolve, because we're going to make decisions like that, and we wouldn't even head down the path if it means, like the last time, that our students are at risk for a financial loss way in advance. If it locks in too soon, we're not even going to start down the path. I'm telling you, I'm not gonna do it.
Well, Mr. Ness, so one of the things, Jason and I met a couple months ago, I believe, to talk about just EF and travel. And, where I'm at with the international travel is, I don't think we can, my recommendation is we don't put ourselves in a situation where we want to cancel trips, right? I think we've got to decide fundamentally, do we feel international travel is an important piece of the learning, the curriculum, the enrichment that we want for our students, and then how do we pick places or pick locations where we feel that it's a safe environment and meets kind of the shared needs, because although I understand what everybody's saying, I do feel there's, no matter what, we're putting ourselves and our district and our families in a tough position if we say we're going to go, but we're going to wait to this point to see if we're really going to go based on world events. And what Jason and I talked about is, my concern as superintendent, and I think you, as we talked last time, share as a board, is when we put our stamp of approval on the board approves this trip, that's what changes everything. It's not, I'm going to go, because what I heard a lot from last time from the families is, give us parental choice. Allow the parents to decide if I feel that it's in my child's best interest to go on the trip. And I said, I completely agree with that, but the difficulty I have is when we approve it, when I recommend it as a superintendent and you approve it as a school board, ultimately, we take on that burden of responsibility for the safety of our students. And that's, that was a lot of our conversation that we talked about. And you've kind of highlighted some of the things, and we talked about, how that works and the safety procedures and protocols that are put into place. But I don't know if that's shared by the board, but that's my mindset. If we really have to look at, if we're going down the road of international travel, then we're going down that road. I wouldn't recommend to the board that we go forward. And then, like he said, if it's a travel alert, it's an alertness. If it's a travel warning, they'll cancel. But if the recommendation is that we want to wait to see how events of the world progress and it's only a travel alert, I don't think that puts us in a good position to be canceling trips, or if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
I
And,
was gonna-
go ahead.
Well, a couple of the things I was gonna volunteer is, one, mitigating the risk. I mean, all travel that I'm aware of has some form of insurance. And so being very clear with the parents that they can pay one fee, and if the program is canceled, these are the monies that they would lose. And I would suggest, if you don't have the kind of travel insurance now, speaking to Carl's point of evolving, that would be one way to address it. As a board, I said it before, it was a one-time approval. I don't see how we as a board continue to indemnify parents when the dangerous world we live in goes awry. I do think it might be reasonable for us at a policy level to say, if we're going to approve travel, way ahead of time. If it's an alert, it can continue. If it's none of us, if suddenly world events go bad, no one's gonna say, you can go, even though, the United States of America is saying, don't go there. There's some, I think, some clear guidelines we can put together. I'm always a big believer in allowing parents to have the information they need to make informed decisions. So, when international travel goes well, everybody has a wonderful experience, and I don't know why we wouldn't foster that as an opportunity. But I think as a board member, I'm very aware that that's an opportunity that is something that parents choose, whether they want their children to be part of or not. And the more we can do to put the parents in the decision-making, I think that's the direction I would recommend. I don't want to be in a position like we were last time where, oh my gosh, world events, and, we live in a world where world events will always happen. I would think we spend the time in front of it that says clearly, this is how we're going to react. You talked about your color scale or what have you. I think it makes sense for us as a district to say, if it's this kind of warning, the event will continue, the travel will continue. If it's whatever level we're uncomfortable with, then we're not gonna approve it. And at that point, we've done our homework ahead of time, and whatever insurance a parent has purchased, or whatever, we've already communicated that if these things happen, if it's this level of an emergency, if it's this level of danger, the district isn't going to approve it, and the district isn't going to say it's parents' choice. It's going to be, the travel is canceled. We'll come to you and say, can we do something creative to go to a safer place? But we've already communicated to the parents that if things go south, this is the unfortunate result of things going south. I think recognizing that if we pick good places and we're diligent about it, we can mitigate that risk. And then, like I said, let parents know. The other comment, I think parents always want to know, you're a for-profit institution. They want to know, what am I buying? And making sure we're getting good information on, you're paying for these services, you're also, you're paying for 1/10 of the chaperones, or you're paying for whatever. Parents should be able to make an informed, transparent choice.
And
Jane?
Yeah, Well, I am all for international travel and the benefit and having a student that participated. I see the value of international travel, but I too am concerned about committing and then finding out after the fact. We need better communication with what happens when. And to the teachers that are going to be requesting authorization for trips, I always feel like we're behind the 8th ball. Like, you already have your 30 kids signed up for the trip, and then it comes to the board for approval. So I think I'd like to see the process work a little differently, in that you come up with what you want to do and then present it to us before all the students get all gung-ho about going on this trip or a trip. And I don't know if that's your experiences or not, and I'd like to see a little clearer delineation and how students can sign up and how they can't sign up. It was kind of rushed last year, I know, because I was getting frantic texts from my child going, I have 10 minutes to decide if I can go on this trip. And I'm like, what are you talking about, a trip? So it just, that is just something I would like to see if we move forward with trips in the future, that it not feel so rushed and more thought out, and that we have, yeah, go ahead.
I'll let you talk. Just to let you know, a lot of, if not all those concerns are addressed during the meetings that we have with the families and the parents up to that point. They're giving documentation about our cancellation policies. They're giving information about insurances that they can purchase. There's a lot of information. I personally do a lot of my own meetings, but in several cases at other schools, the teachers take it upon themselves. I always make myself available so that they can have a representative of the company there to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and I answer every single question that is posed to me, and I have a pretty detailed presentation, a PowerPoint presentation that walks through everything with them. A lot of times when I stop the presentation, I ask for questions. There isn't any, because I have covered everything so thoroughly. And so my services for that, to make sure that all happens, is always available. If you want to come on.
I just wanted to say that frantic sign up, that was my trip. And the reason it was so crazy with signing up is, first of all, I never presented this information to my students before it was approved by you. It's not fair to them, it's not fair to you, because that puts you in an awkward situation and it can give them false hope. I don't do that. I was on maternity leave when I was planning it. So what happened was, the meeting that we had was at 7 o'clock. By the time I got home and went to bed, we already had 30 kids signed up for the trip. The next morning, by 11 o'clock, all 41 spots were taken, and I cut it off. The reason why people signed up so fast is because they knew I had a cutoff, and that cutoff was important for me because we could only fit 46 people on a bus, or 48 people on a bus, one of the two. And if I would have let that keep going, I wouldn't be able to be on the second bus with my students, and I needed to be with every single one of them, because otherwise I wouldn't have been comfortable. So that's why it was so frantic. So I cut it off at 41 people. And we've never had a response like that before. And if that was to happen again, then another French teacher would have needed to be with me. But I wasn't going to have one of my chaperones who did not speak French on a bus with my students. So that's why that part was crazy.
So one of the things I would need to see is, I'd like to see, what are the cancellation policies? What is the timing of the trip? I'd like to see a timeline like that. I'd also like to see anywhere where we're going to propose a trip. I would like to see if EF has a security review of that town, or of where we're going to be. I'd like to see that information as well, because if you're saying, because you do get a lot of negative news, and it's France, and France is big, right? But they're not going to France, so let's just put it down there. But they might. But anyways, I'd like to see, where are we going? And what is that security review that we see? What information do you have that makes you feel you're safe, that I'm seeing in the paper, or reading, or researching, or whatever that's not? I mean, I just finished General Mattis's book, Left of Bang, and I want us to stay left of bang on all these things, so that nothing occurs to these children. It's all about situational awareness and preparing and all that kind of stuff. So so that's a start, okay? I'd like to go through some of those.
All that is entirely reasonable, and we do hang on the recommendations coming straight from the State Department, but we use also third-party risk assessment companies. We also rely on the fact that we do have those operating offices in the countries that we're going to, so we have eyes on everything. The 43,000 employees, most of them are scattered throughout the world, and they give us a nice window too of their own personal experiences, and they say, hey, here's neighborhoods that you don't want to be in, or whatever it might be. So I think that's totally doable. I know that all the other stuff that's kind of common practice with us, and I don't see any issues with that whatsoever.
Mr. Naso, if it's okay with you and the rest of the board, I've been taking notes throughout the comments to see where some of the suggestions were, more information is needed, and you know, I can work with our World Language Department and EF and come back and, you know, if we're open to it, talk about specifics as to where they may be looking to go in the upcoming years, and then kind of address that. And Richard, I don't know if you want to go through then and take some of those ideas to the policy committee when we meet, to kind of, I like the idea of setting some framework of, because I agree with you, it's never going to be safe as we would like to think it would be. So those two avenues, if that's okay, that could at least be a starting point to continue the discussion.
Okay, that would be great.
One real quick thing, Superintendent Ryba, I sent to you some information about we talked about the cultural effect on students and things like that, but actually academic successes that come from having these opportunities. So if you could sort of disseminate that out to the whole group, sure. Just for good basic reading, and put my email in there if anyone ever needs to talk to get things straight from the horse's mouth. I do. EF is in Boston, but I live here in this area. I live in North Ridgeville. So at any time anybody wants to have coffee with me, more than willing to do that. We can talk in greater detail, because I know that we're pressed for time here. But there's a lot of things we have not covered that I think are very pertinent.
Yeah. Oh, no, we love it here. We stay till 11. I got two last things for you. I'll tell you first an anecdote. I landed in Paris one time going to a place. I was in the military at the time, and they were very careful to tell us, the U.S. Embassy said, make sure you're in civilian clothes. Don't be wearing your uniforms, because the French people don't particularly care for that, and there are elements that might not take kindly to it. So we all changed into civilian clothes and were promptly picked up in Chrysler K cars with diplomatic plates and driven around Paris. So that didn't really do too much for the disguise, so to speak. The other thing I was going to ask is, doesn't French Polynesia sound like a pretty good destination?
All I want to know is the next time you go to the Galapagos, that's on the bucket list. So
Yeah.
you got to let me know about that one. Was it? I'd love to take my kids.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I do have to say, oh, I'm sorry, Richard.
Richard.
go ahead.
That's okay. I just had one other comment, and it was responding to the French timeline. One of the things I hear is that we can do a better job of communicating back and forth. But the thought, if there's, you know, and I understand you can't just keep it open and let anybody on, but the thought of artificially saying only 41 can join, and you have this deadline, and first come, first serve, you know, it'd be great to figure out ways to communicate better, to figure out ways to judge interest and say ahead of time, whoa, we might be able to do 2 buses, and have that time to plan and say, okay, if we're going to do that, how many people do we have, et cetera, instead of, and I know it wasn't done as, nothing was done maliciously, but the thought of, you know, you have 10 minutes and go to mom and dad and go, no go, you know, let's do some pre-planning, because I would think as far as a principle or something for us to shoot for, the more that we can have participate would be a better thing.
And thank your
I
husband
do have
for his service
available to you
and for keeping
surveys
our
that you
children
could send to students to
And
ahead of time.
congratulations in advance.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. They've asked me multiple times, am I sure they're okay to go home? And I've told them, so they're not being rude. I've told them, please go home.
Yeah.
Enjoy what you have left of your evening, and see you back here tomorrow. Thank you for your
Good night.
time.
Thank you very much for coming.
Okay to move on, Mr. Naso?
Please.
Bon chance.
Got Godspeed. Through this thing, man.
Under business services, we have one item to enter into the cooperative purchasing program for rock salt, which can be found in Exhibit B. Again, that's not purchasing any rock salt, that's just entering into the consortium to bid when the time comes. Moving on to the next page, we've already gone through
Cam-
human resources.
Help my memory, and Mr. Dooner's gone, but don't we partner with the city on rock salt?
It's through ODOT. We did one year where
Yeah.
when we didn't have the bin, but this is all through ODOT
Okay.
now. Human resources we talked about, and technology, man. When you
Yeah.
have stuff on the agenda, you have stuff on the agenda. So Vicki Turner, Director of Technology, with her report.
Thank you. My items are a little more exciting than rock salt, but not much. Thank you and good evening, members of the board, Mr. Ryba and Mrs. Palco. Before I start, I would like to thank Scott Benson because we have the truck back. And he did drive down many dead ends but steered us in the right direction. I know those are horrible puns. But we are really excited and happy that for a very minimal fee, we got the truck repaired. At first, we were told there was no way, we couldn't do it. And he just kept searching and making more phone calls and trying and having people look at it. So we're very happy that we now have our truck and all our cameras back in operation.
Vicki,
All right,
Vicki, if I
pardon
could
me?
maybe just interject one thing.
Yes.
Just because we put a little bit of money into the truck and we got it moving, let's get that truck where it needs to be. There's still things that need to be done. Let's make sure we preserve it so it doesn't happen again. So let's mine a few more dollars to make sure that we don't go a long stretch
And
without it.
he did take he has some good pictures of what they did inside, and then they got new tires and cleaned it up quite a bit, but we will definitely keep an eye on it.
We got the Breckner now. We don't have to worry about that.
Under technology, D1, I do have our whiteboards, our projectors, and the supplies needed. This will finish up the Epson interactive projectors and everything that's needed for the district. So that means all the elementaries are done, the middle school and high school are done. As a point of reference, about 3 years ago, we got our first Epson, and researching them, one of the biggest draws was that the bulbs were much cheaper and they didn't need to be replaced as often. Normally, bulbs are about $300 on projectors. We had our first bulb burnout, basically, and it was $40 to replace it, and that's 3 years ago. So that's our first one. So we've been very happy with our Epson projectors. So that will finish that. And then D2, I have my Chromebook purchase. These are for the Chromebooks and the cases and the management licenses for the freshman one-to-one that will be next year. So normally this would have come a little bit later, but actually if I ordered in May, they gave me a little bit more of a discount. So we had the money in our budget, so we did that. I was also happy, I was checking with some other companies. Last year, the cases were $25, and another company that I met at a Google Summit this past couple days ago is going to give us cases for $18.80. So we came down a little bit in price there. Then I also have two items on here. One is for middle school Chromebook purchase. Those will be coming out of their budget. And also Sarar Elementary School. And those, we worked with them, and they were making those purchases from their budget for their buildings. And then I have other items, but I'm going to have Jim come up. He has worked really, really hard on our new contract, making phone calls. I'm sorry.
That's all right, Vicki. In number 1, ballpark, how many Chromebooks are we buying?
Number 2, you mean?
Number 2, almost 500.
Oh, sorry, number
Yep.
2.
It will, we purchased the Chromebooks for the incoming freshmen and then also for the online academy students. And then good news is Sean Collins' blended learning class got quite a few, 32. So we also provide Chromebooks for those blended learning students.
Vicki, if I could ask,
Mhm.
before we passed our bond issue and we started applying technology to these buildings and Chromebooks, give me a guess on what the percentage of classrooms that had whiteboard projectors and whatnot in our district. No, we had a few.
We
We had a few.
We had 3
5%,
different
10%.
brands.
Yeah, they were all different.
Yeah, there were Smart, Mimeo, and the,
PTA.
yes.
Yeah.
And then we've had a lot of problems with our whiteboards warping because they were old. So the smart boards, because now we use stainless steel. Our whiteboards are stainless steel with a porcelain coating, so they will not warp. But the other ones have a marsh, like a particle board inside, and they were warping, and they were to the point of where we had to take them down because they were dangerous. And then even the smart boards were starting to warp, and once that happens, you can't fix them. So we were in pretty bad shape in
But
our
what's the
buildings.
percentage of classrooms that actually had the technology? 5%? 10%?
No, I think more than that had it, but they weren't working well, and they weren't using it. So this,
It
That's
depended
because
on
they
the
didn't have
building.
you teaching them how to use it. That you were the missing component.
I mean, when we were looking at, when I was a principal, each building probably had two or three.
Right.
And then what happened is PTAs started buying them. So you had buildings that had, maybe every classroom had one, but it was because PTAs were able to fund those. So, yeah, it went from 2 to 3 classrooms to the have and the have-nots, depending on what the PTAs could do. And then, as Vicki said, you look at our tech department, they're fixing smart boards, Eno boards, Mimeo boards, and it's all 3 different platforms. As somebody in Vicki's position, how do you teach people how to use an interactive whiteboard when you're teaching them 3 different platforms?
And my point for asking the question is, in 4 years,
yes,
how far have we come?
yes.
How
Very
much
far.
better have we done?
Okay, so that's,
And to stick my nose up at Columbus a little bit, we've done this with our money.
yes.
We've done it without anyone's help, and we've furthered the education of our children, the opportunity of our children, and we still reduced our budget. So congratulations to
Thank
the tech
you.
department
I
for
will
everything that
say,
you guys are doing.
I think the high school had 3 smart boards when I started there 6 years ago. So,
Yeah.
I know my daughter had one in her 5th grade class that they never used.
Yes,
So, I mean, it was never used.
yeah, some of them were in
And
pretty
that's
bad
'cause
shape.
I don't know if it didn't work. I don't know what the deal was, but it's highly annoying to see it there and
Not at work.
stuff
being used.
stuck to it. Like a-
Well, Dwayne is really good at tracking our projectors. So he keeps track, so he knows where the bulbs are in their life. He knows how much the whiteboards are being used, so we talk about ones that aren't being used, so then I can go help and meet with teachers and see, if it's not getting as much use. That's a instructional piece that we work on.
Do we have any of the whiteboards in classrooms that currently do not have classes in them? They're like overflow rooms or the special rooms that are?
Projectors?
Yes. Are they in
Anywhere- We
every
do-
classroom?
We do keep track of that, so we look at a room, and we've been talking with the high school about room use, and for instance, in the media center, there are a couple projectors in 2 of those upstairs rooms, the small ones, that we'll probably take down. Because we have the smaller table projectors that we can use in there in a room that doesn't get a lot of traffic.
We have some, we have a couple buildings that have empty classrooms at the elementary level. The only ones where they have projectors that they haven't been relocated is what they use for their meeting room or their staff meeting room.
Okay.
But like at Maraski, there's a couple classrooms that don't have the projector that are just vacant.
Okay, thank you.
And there was a concerted effort to categorize and harvest all technology that we had put into the buildings for those buildings that we were going to remove, Drake and things like that. And there's actually a room. One of the great things about Zellers is they actually have a room, a warehouse for they have shelves of equipment lined up so that we kept everything that we spent money on.
So, and speaking of that, if you got a chance to look at our augmented reality sandbox in the back, we built that yesterday at a workshop. And it was, I should say, I did not build it. I took pictures and I worked on the curriculum. Dwayne Cook, Rich Miltner, and Mark Ohm built it. And as you can see, it's welded. There's a little projector hanging. There's the computer. All of that came with it, but we will now build 6 more so that every building has one. So tomorrow, I think Dan Hogan and Ted Harderby are coming over so they can look at that construction because they can help in their wood shop and metals class. So that'll go into our makerspace in all of the buildings.
Cool.
So those are, we're
Amazing.
excited about that. All right, so my next piece, and I would also like to say that Jim has saved us thousands and thousands of dollars in money that we used to spend on billable hours, that he has been doing a lot of that work in-house. So literally, we've had a lot of extra money, not a lot of extra money in our account, but we have extra money because he's been doing most of that work. So if, Jim, you want to come up, and we have our contract, our AT&T fiber network contract, our Time Warner 5-year contract has ended. And I'll let Jim kind of go through the process and some of the vendors, and he has a very nice graphic also.
So, that's okay. I'm glad for it.
So, first of all, good evening, everyone. As Vicki stated, our contract with Time Warner is up in the summer. So as a result of that, I put out for bid through the E-rate process on a form, it's called a Form 470, but it's not important. So we bid out for that. I had respondents come back. I believe I had 7 respondents come back. And AT&T was the overall clear winner as far as price goes. It was all over the board. It was amazing to me where we had, you know, AT&T came in at $7,000 and another company came in at $90,000 a month, and it's like, wow, what a spread. So, but what I wanted to let you, what we're talking about here is this is basically our network. Middle school's at the center. All the buildings connect in. These red connections here are what we're talking about. All the buildings connecting back to the middle school. We're not talking about traffic out to the internet yet. This is just about our internal network. So we want to go with AT&T 10 gigabit lit fiber. To accomplish that, we also want to put these switches, these edge switches at each building to give us our 10 gig connectivity.
Getting all tingly, Richard?
Me too, it's good, it's good.
So that's basically it. Like I said, we had 7 respondents. AT&T, again, the clear winner. Those are some of the costs. If you have any further questions, I'll be glad to answer them in more detail.
How long is the contract?
5 years.
Okay. And this will, even with enrollment fluctuating down and up, this is the kind of capacity that we need?
I believe so.
Okay.
What we're seeing is we're having increased video usage that is part of our network. We have increased surveillance camera traffic. The new cameras are all coming, they're HD. So the bigger the sizes get, the more bandwidth they chew up. We're starting to see some inter-building communication. And keep in mind, our phone system runs on top of all of this. And yes, I think we're planning for the future for our internal connections and preparing for potentially more bandwidth out.
The one comment I would make, to be clear, whether it's the audience at home or amongst ourselves, these are the connections between the individual schools. So the gigabit sounds great, and it is great, but it's limited as far as if people are thinking, oh my gosh, the internet is going to be so much faster. It's limited between the connections of the school. It is the first step. It's the right, in my opinion, it's the right first step. But the next step after this is addressing our internet connection. The school district doesn't have separate internet connections for each school. It's one internet connection that then gets shared. Right now, the choke point, one of the choke points, is those connections between each school. I always use the analogy of water because it's easier to understand. This will expand the pipe between each school so that when water or the internet is going through or any network activity, it won't have a choke point. The next thing that we'll be addressing is the internet connection, which right now is in the middle school. That next step, you know, we can have these great big fat pipes, but we still need to address the internet connection, and that's the next step. But it's a chicken egg thing. You know, if we had a huge internet connection, but the pipes to each individual school couldn't handle it, then it wouldn't matter how fast that internet connection is. You know, you can imagine having a water pipe to your development, and it could be, 100 inches in diameter. If the pipes to each house are only a half an inch, all that capacity is going to stop until it gets to the house. So what we're doing now is expanding the pipes to each school or each house. The next step will be to expand the internet connection. But a lot of the activity, if you imagine from an educational standpoint, this is going to open up activity between the schools, whether it be, from administrative, the security, et cetera. But now suddenly, things like having Kinsner interact with Maraski, or having Chapman interact with another elementary, or more, I think more likely the elementaries interacting with the middle school interacting with the high school. All of those kind of opportunities now are available and viable. The other one, from a practical standpoint, online testing is here. It's not going away. It's, we can complain about it or debate whether it's good or bad, but it's here and it's not going away. And in the past, we've run into problems because everybody's taking those tests at once. We're not going to have that problem amongst the schools. And it's particularly pleasing to me that we're getting away from Time Warner. They have not been a good partner with us in the past, and I'm pleased that they're not going to be a partner with us in the future. And sometimes the competitive market works, and if you bring forward a good product and at a competitive price, you're going to get the business. And I think AT&T is going to do a much better job for the district going forward.
Jim, what's the plan to get the Nowaka, get them a 10 gig to the internet?
10 gig to the internet, I think, was going to cost $280,000 a year. So I think our plan here is to incrementally step that up as we see our needs go up.
What's our connection speed now?
1 gig.
1 gig?
1 gig.
So you either go 1 or 10, there's really nothing in between, right?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of steps between, and those costs are, they incrementally go up the more bandwidth that you want. And then the other thing that we have to consider is, as you increase the bandwidth, it's not just like, turning up a volume knob on a stereo. Now I have to go get a bigger amplifier if I want to use that analogy. So there's an equipment cost as well to be able to get the throughput through the equipment. So not only does the bandwidth itself cost money, the equipment to handle that increased bandwidth costs more money, and the more bandwidth it can handle generally, the more expensive it is.
Is Nowaka our best bet still? Or is
I think that it is, for a couple of reasons. Number one, they provide a lot of professional services for us. If I'm having trouble with a web filter, if I'm having trouble with a firewall, many of those things I'm capable of handling, but if I run into a situation, I can pick up the phone and I get great support from them. The other thing that we benefit from is that because we go through Nowaka, we get monies back. George could tell you what that is. I don't remember what that is exactly, but I know that we get about $1,000 or so per building every year. And then the other thing is that they keep our connections secure for things like the financial packages. They have a connection, a separate connection. Part of their connection goes out to the internet. Another part of their connection goes to something called ORNet, which is the Ohio Educational Network. So when George logs into the financial packages or other people throughout the district, it travels out us into Nowaka, goes through ORNet, which is secured, and goes to Treka or Meta. And that keeps our data more secure than if I were to go out another provider. We would have to have more equipment that could do, that could secure that traffic, because we don't want to leak financial data. It all would have to be SSL, all that kind of stuff, and they handle a lot of that for us.
Okay. At the end of the day, Duke, it's a bundled package, and so individually, you know, you might get a better price on this individual, you might get a better price on this individual, but if you go separate providers for everything, you're gonna pay more than the
Yes.
bundled package
And
that we
that's
get
kind of to
through.
the point that I was trying to get to. You know, we have a bundle, there are advantages to us for that bundle price.
If we had to roll our own, it would be more expensive in the end.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay. Nice work.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you very much,
Appreciate
Jim.
it. Did we talk about?
The brocade switch
E-rate,
purchase.
brocade. Did you want to do the E-rate brocade, talk about what we're doing with the switches, or Vicki, did you want to do that one?
And I think Jim, you touched on it.
I did touch on it. Those
Oh, okay.
switches.
Are the edge
Companion
routers?
hardware.
Yeah, those are gonna be the edge switches that go out to each individual building
Okay.
to handle those 10 gig connections.
Got it.
Okay.
So AT&T will dump the 10 gig into the middle school, we'll pull those out, we'll put those switches in, and that gets me a couple of things, or gets us a couple of things. It gets us a more unified network with the same vendor. So, you know, the high school is all Brocade, the middle school is all Brocade, all the elementary buildings are all Cisco. So I'm trying to get the network a little bit more unified on one platform. And that's the first step to get that done in those buildings, and we'll look at replacing some of the other switches into the future.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Mhm.
With that, that ends my report.
All right. That brings us to the consent calendar. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Does Duke need to
I'm gonna
have?
do it
Yes.
I'm
during the
going to.
discussion. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Duke, have a second?
Yes.
George, okay.
And
Duke.
breakout number 5, 7D5, and so I may recuse myself, please, sir.
Yes, okay, so we'll vote on item 7D5 separately. George, we'd like to do that first. And Duke will recuse himself.
All right, so just gonna say Cronover's name so you can abstain. Cronovans?
Recuse?
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mr. Naso?
Yes,
Motion passes 4-0.
all right. That brings us to,
And one abstention, I'm sorry.
what's that?
One
And one
abstention.
abstention.
Okay,
We gotta do it again.
we have to do what again?
You have to vote
No,
on
I
it
said
again.
Oh, well, now we're gonna vote on the
Yeah.
total consent, that's what I'm doing.
No, I said one abstention. for
The other
Okay.
5. So
We have a
moved.
motion, we don't need another motion, we just need a vote.
So Cronovans?
Yes.
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mr. Naso?
Yes,
Motion passes.
excellent. Any Board of Education other?
Just the Strongsville Educational Foundation will have their Jockeys and Juleps, I want to say
Saturday night.
Saturday night, but it's a fundraiser for the amount of money that they bring to our children. It's a wonderful event. It's a lot of fun. I will be wearing a god-awful bow tie my wife picked out,
I
but
thought you were gonna say hat.
no, that's no. But it is at the rec center. There's still tickets and sponsorships available. Please donate. Please come. Please help. It's a lot of fun. So if you have any questions, please let me know. This Saturday.
Excellent. Anyone else?
No, just everybody check your school calendars. There's lots of things going on this spring with concerts and academic recognitions, and it's just fun
Lots of
things to
fun.
do. The art show at the high school tomorrow night, if you don't have anything going on, that's always a wonderful event. I'm not sure if the orchestra is going to be playing again. They were playing the last 2 years, so that's another, even if you don't enjoy art, you might enjoy the music. So.
Oh, the art show's excellent.
It is.
Okay, and then we have a change of date on a board meeting. Our next board meeting will be on May 23rd at 7 o'clock. It was originally scheduled for May 18th. We've moved it to accommodate the retiree reception. So, everyone tune in. I'm sure it'll be exciting. We do have need for executive session, but just very briefly.
Yes, to consider the employment of a public employee or official.
Have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Can we add a negotiations update?
Sure, to review negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees. You can add that one too.
We'll enter in at 8:52.
Oh, we gotta take a vote.
Take a vote.
Mr. Grozan?
Yes.
Colonel Evans?
Yes.
Mrs. Ludwig?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mr. Mesa?
Yes.
So enter an executive session, 8:52.
There'll be no public business when we resume.